So as we continue our look at the planets now, we come to the planet Venus, and we go back to our chart here that we'd like to start with. Here's the sun here, of course. There's Mercury right there, which we discussed in the last set of videos. And here's Venus, second one from the sun. First thing you realize about Venus is it's very similar in size to the Earth. And so for that reason, sometimes Venus is called the Earth's sister planet, although other than the size, the planets couldn't really be any more different, as we'll see. So on we go. And I'd like to start by doing a little bit of reading for you here out of your book, because your book has just a wonderful introduction to Venus here, which I thought is worth looking at. So after the sun, Venus is the brightest object in the sky when it's visible. And this is kind of interesting because, well, what about the moon? Well, the moon has varying degrees of brightness, as you know, when it's in this crescent and even new moon and full moon phases. But Venus is reliably one of the brightest objects in the sky when it's up. Viewed against the dark azure blue of the early morning or late evening sky, the planet looks like a brilliant oil lamp floating serenely out at sea. The most important, interesting part about this introduction, I think, is that the history of Venus. So here we go. So over the centuries, Venus has tantalized earthbound astronomers. The planet's surface is permanently hidden behind a thick, extensive cloud deck. And what might lie beneath these lemon-colored clouds became a rich tapestry for both scientists and science fiction authors. Could it be that the planet was a tropical paradise where giant dinosaurs ruled with impunity? Perhaps the surface was covered in oil that would provide an almost unlimited amount of energy if it could be harvested. Others thought the planet might harbor an advanced civilization who occasionally visited the Earth in their flying saucers. And so, of course, there was no evidence to the contrary of any of this stuff, so speculation can converge on the wildest ideas. And so finally, after a very, very long time of this kind of speculation going on, here you go. On December 14th, 1962, Mariner 2 arrived at Venus and revealed not a tropical paradise, but a world bearing a close resemblance to hell. Thick, poisonous clouds of carbon dioxide trapped the sun's heat, raising the surface temperature to a baking 425 degrees. They also create intense pressure. The atmospheric pressure on the surface is around 100 times greater than on Earth at sea level. For many people, it would be a shock to learn that our sister planet was as inhospitable as she was beautiful. Only those who suggested a runaway greenhouse effect might have saw the planet deliver the expected. So see, Venus has always been this really interesting place about what if that. But really, the only what ifs about Venus at the moment that we'll talk about in particular here are this temperature. It is so hot there all the time. And there's something also that we hear on Earth from time to time about the greenhouse effect, and that'll be something we'll discuss as well. Yeah, a little bit of a conclusion here. Although Venus was not as predicted, in many ways the planet has delivered greater mysteries than those just created by the human mind, than those just created by the minds of humans. So as we discover Venus, it has a lot of mysteries that we need to unlock. So here's a relative size comparison once again. Here's Mercury right here, as we've seen. Here's Mars right here, which we'll get to next. And here's Venus right here, and here's Earth. So you see the similar size. And once again, the nondescript look of Venus here is as an indication of that cloud deck, the intense cloud cover of carbon dioxide that cover the planet. Here's an actual picture. Again, very nondescript, just clouds. Clouds of CO2 is about all you're going to get. Here's something like what it would look like in the night sky. Definitely overexposed, but you see it's very bright there, at least in comparison to some stars around it, all things being equal. If the camera shutter was open for a bit, which looks like it was, because you can see some star trails right there, Venus is very bright. And surprise, surprise, here's also Venus here. It looks like it's showing phases. And I put an exclamation point after that, because normally we think of the word phases as only applying to our moon, but it turns out it applies to Venus as well. And so why would Venus have phases? Well, remember the orientation of the solar system then. It is different than the moon for sure. But if the sun is here, now you start drawing your orbits here. Here's Mercury. And here's Venus. And of course, Earth is outside of it. And so where are we? Well, we're always on Earth right here looking out at our solar system. This is where we are right here. And so if we ever look at Venus, remember, we're sort of looking from the Earth inwards towards the sun. As we said, Venus and Mercury are very close to the sun. So we're always looking inwards towards the sun. And generally, this graphic here sort of shows you what view we would see, right? So here's the Earth right here, here's the sun, and Venus is orbiting sort of between us and the sun. And because Venus is sort of between us and the sun, sometimes it's called an inferior planet. Inferior. Not to mean that it's any worse than the Earth or less interesting or not to be studied or silly, anything like that. Inferior just means it's between us and the sun. And for that reason, we'll get the phases of Venus, as I'll pick up discussing in the next video.